But my endeavor was also to shed lights on some of these social factors in an entertaining way, less preachy way,
Yeah.
inviting readers to reflect on the choices that they make in their lives, and
Hmm.
to take a relook at their relationships and see if there is any way there is scope for them to be more empathetic. So there was a survey by McKinsey which showed that 75% of women around the globe have to contend in their organizations they worked in. They had to contend with unconscious and conscious biases,
Yeah.
stereotypes,
Hmm.
and microaggressions. The source of your courage, the source of your motivation lies within you. You
Yeah.
don't have to look externally for motivation, for inspiration.
Right.
Just look in the mirror, and for a change, don't count your flaws. Don't look at those gray hair. Instead, look at that smile that is lighting up your face.
How wonderful. How wonderful is that? Hi, Smita, and welcome to the About Her show. This is a show where we get trailblazing women to share the story of their lives with us, to tell us about their journeys, successes, failures, ups and downs, all of it, so that not only do they get to showcase themselves, but they also help us in inspiring other women who are listening in. Women who have dreams, aspirations, but for one reason or the other have not been able to pursue them. We hope that by listening into such conversations, they will also get motivated and inspired to, pursue those. And along with women, we also get men on the show, men who champion such trailblazing women. Because we believe that for a truly gender inclusive world, men and women need to be allies in this journey. So, a very, very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much, Sangita. And it's a real pleasure to be invited here for your show. Thank you for considering me worthy enough to be here with you today.
I think any woman who's able to follow her dreams, aspirations, and do the kind of work that you're doing, I think more than deserves to be on any such show. I've been looking at your profile, your, stint with coaching and writing. There are so many things you're doing along with every other thing that a woman has to do. I think it's absolutely incredible. So there was no
Thanks. Thank
way,
you for your kind words.
there was no way that I couldn't have, got you here. So anyway, so let's get started. And just as an icebreaker, if you could tell us a little bit about your early life, your childhood, how you grew up, and if you think any of those influences from those days, they impacted you in a way, that you, the kind of person that you are today, if they impacted you in a way to become that person.
So, Sangeeta, I am from a defense background. My dad was in the Indian Army. So,
Okay.
what that means is from the very early days, as far back as I could remember, I have wandered all around the country because of my father's job.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, because of that, I would call myself someone who is very adaptable, very flexible to changing circumstances. Because what that meant, every 2.5 years, we were changing the stations, the cities where we have been based. So my upbringing has been all over the country, all corners. Apart from South India, I have stayed like in West India, East India, North. Then after my schooling, my education was in Delhi. I did my BCom honors from SRCC in Delhi University, followed by my MBA from IIM Indore.
Mm-hmm.
And then I worked for 14 years in the corporate world. So before becoming a coach, I was a strategy and management consulting professional working in leadership roles across Fortune 500 companies like KPMG, United Technologies Corporation, and JLL.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere along the lines, I also headed business units. I headed finance function for an entity. And during the last 2-3 years of my 14-year corporate tenure, I started questioning
Uh-huh.
what did when I was in my 20s. I very much liked it then. But when I was in my 30s, there was this question that came, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer was no. Even though the answer was no, first I tried to deny it. Then I'm like, okay, even if it's a no, this is what I have been doing. What do I do? Nothing can be done. So it took a lot of introspection, a lot of courage, a lot
Hmm.
of motivation to take that leap. So I have always been regarded as someone who is a good leader, and I
Hmm.
enjoyed bringing the best out of people. I was someone uh, at that stage. I'm talking somewhere around 2021. I was very sure I want to work less on PowerPoints, which I was doing in my corporate job,
Yeah.
and more with people.
Hmm.
And that is when I decided that coaching is something that will enable me to do that. And
Hmm.
at the same time, I had this creative streak. So even when I was a child, I was into reading, and from there writing was a natural progression. And I wrote something, used to write something creatively right till my college days. And
Oh,
after that, balance sheet and business reports took center stage.
yeah.
Then
Yeah.
again, when I was introspecting, I'm like, taking a pivot into writing as well will help to satisfy this creative streak that was again rearing its head. So that was when, since somewhere in the middle of 2021, I took a leap of faith,
Hmm.
left aside a job where I was doing very well, earning like a seven-figure salary,
Yeah.
and decided to pivot into two new worlds. Coaching and writing both was new for me, and I
Yeah.
decided to take that leap of faith. Now, as a coach, I'm an executive coach and personal empowerment life coach since the last 3.5 years. I work with mid career and senior professionals to help them get better at what they do and transform their passion into profession so that
Wow.
they work because they want to and
Hmm.
not because they have to.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also a writer. So far, I've authored 4 books, and I have been fortunate enough to do a lot of speaking along the way. So I'm a 2x TEDx speaker. So that has been my journey so far from the early days till now.
Okay, very interesting. I mean, imagine, starting out in the corporate world, then, doing a rethink and then getting into the space of coaching and writing. So diverse, related in some ways, but diverse also. And like you said, it's not easy to take these kind of decisions, because when you've been doing something for a very long time and suddenly you decide to change, of course, it requires a lot of courage, a lot of conviction to be able to do that. So kudos to you. So tell me,
Thank you.
you're welcome. You have written, like you said, 4 books, and the last one is called Till Fate Do Us Part. So could you tell us a little bit about what that book is about? Why did you write it? And what has been the response so far as your readers are concerned?
So this is the book, Sangeeta, Till
Yeah.
Fate Do Us Part. And just like a child is dear to her mother, so are all my books very dear to me, as it is for all the writers.
Hmm.
So my latest one, Till Fate Do Us Part, it's a contemporary medical romance,
Mm-hmm.
prima facie. That is, genre wise, that is what it is.
Hmm.
Underneath, it is so much more. So this is a product of my experiences, insights, and imagination.
Hmm.
This is a story of Gaurang, Vedika, and Rohan.
Hmm.
So a love triangle where
Hmm.
there is a lot of relationship dynamics that is involved in the picture.
Okay.
And this story is something that emerged from my deep observations of human associations and the unspoken dynamics that often govern them.
Hmm.
As a
Hmm.
person, I've always been fascinated by the way people interact with each other, the way they navigate love, commitments, and the invisible threads of fate
Hmm.
that binds or separates them. And
Okay.
that is what I've tried to share through this story.
Hmm.
How life can pull us in unexpected directions, and how love, in its many forms,
Mm-hmm.
can be both our greatest strength and our most profound vulnerability.
Hmm.
So, this novel, it's a narrative where the boundaries between personal and professional lives blur,
Hmm.
and where the choices people make can lead them to uncharted territories without them even realizing it.
Yeah.
The decisions they take alters the course of their lives in ways they could never have anticipated. So
Hmm.
through this story, I have attempted to explore these themes with my readers, inviting them to reflect on their own relationships and
Yeah.
the subtle forces that shape their lives. And I have also woven some social narratives along the way. For example, the theme of empathy in healthcare,
Okay.
so important but yet so neglected. And I have seen both the empathetic and the apathetic side of healthcare. So
Hmm.
again, some of my observations, I've put that in the form of fiction. Then again, the theme of parenting a special needs child. So there is a special needs character in the novel, and many of my readers have told me that this is the first time that in an Indian novel they are seeing a character who is a special needs character, and one of the key pivots around which the story revolves.
Hmm.
It tackles the question of violence against doctors, something that I didn't anticipate when I wrote, but in the contemporary times that we are
Yeah.
living in, that has become so much evident.
Yeah.
So my endeavor was also through this story, and of course, it's a romance, it's contemporary, so there is this, the love triangle thing, the relationship thing that is happening.
Hmm.
But my endeavor was also to shed lights on some of these social factors in an entertaining way, less preachy way,
Yeah.
inviting readers to reflect on the choices that they make in their lives,
Hmm.
and to take a relook at their relationships and see if there is any way there is scope for them to be more empathetic with the people they interact with.
Okay.
uh, and I'm very fortunate you asked for the reader's reaction. As
Hmm.
a writer, there's no greater validation than knowing that the world you have created, the characters you have poured your heart into, and the emotions you have carefully crafted have resonated so deeply with someone else. So
Yeah.
I've been getting a lot of good remarks from readers. The reviews have been great. There are people who have been reaching out to me over WhatsApp, over my Instagram and Facebook DMs, telling me that there are some people who have read all four of my books, and they are saying that this is like one where they feel most emotionally connected,
Okay.
invested in the characters. It feels that the characters are so realistic and the emotions have been so vividly portrayed. One or two of them told me they actually cried while
Oh,
reading the book
okay.
because they were so invested. And that tells me that the story has connected. So
Oh,
it's a validation of the effort and emotional energy that I've poured into crafting this story.
yes.
So, yeah, so far, so good.
Of course. So it has been good so far. I'm sure it'll continue to be good. And like you said, yes, for a writer, there is no greater validation than something like this coming from the readers. I mean, readers who love your book, the way you have narrated the story. And I mean, like when you were talking about it, yes, I was also thinking that, yes, it is so relatable. You're talking about relationships, you're talking about choices, all these things, they have such a great impact on our lives. And it is so good that you're making the readers reflect on them. Yes, because I think that's a great thing. So, all right. So tell me, Smita, of course, growing up and then, pursuing a career of your choice and then doing this pivot and getting into coaching and writing as well. So I'm sure the journey must have been fraught with challenges. So if you could elaborate on some of those, and if you think that those challenges or some of those challenges were gender related.
Okay, I'll get into the gender related question later, but challenges, okay, and it's so important, and I think that's a very significant question that you asked me here. See, when anyone does a pivot, uh, there are always one set of challenges that are extrinsic,
Mhm.
external to you,
Mhm.
okay. So there are I mean, there is a comfortable job, or at least a steady job. When you are
Yeah.
salaried, it gives you a steady source of income.
Yeah.
You are leaving that. Then there's this society pressure. There are people around you who are well wishers, and they don't want you to take risks simply because they don't want you to fail. They're
Mm.
concerned about you. And
Mm.
then there's this so their questions: why are you doing this? Everything is going well. What is the need? And
Mm.
even if you're thinking it, why don't you do it on the side? And because they're well wishers, these are people near and dear to you, you let this play on your head. Then of course, one is you deciding to do, and then there is this barriers, roadblocks, the perception. So for example, when I decided to become a coach, and in my initial days after I did my coach training, I reached out to the same corporates, as in the HRs in the same corporates that I worked in earlier, in
Hmm.
a general management role or in a line function. That's the way they call it. And everyone was willing to take me back in my previous role. But when I'm like, okay, consider me as a coach, and then there's this perception that, oh, but you are not from HR background,
Yeah.
and some you are doing something completely different. How can we have established people who have been doing this for years? So it
Hmm.
is that mindset that people have. Somebody, when they say somebody is 18 years, so when I introduce myself, I say I have 18 years of experience.
Yeah.
And they would be happy if I say I have 18 years of experience in a particular field.
Correct.
But the moment when I or they get into the details, which will happen when you are considering that, and then you say, okay, I have been actually, now I'm doing it for 4 years, so I am experienced here also now. But
Hmm.
at that time when I started, it was like, okay, for 14 years I was doing this. Now I'm doing this, and I have the best of credentials. I made sure that I got affiliated to the International Coaching Federation. I did my coach education training from USA. I fulfilled all the stringent requirements to become a certified coach. So anyone can call themselves a coach, but being a certified coach, and that through from International Coaching Federation, there are certain minimum rigorous requirements which
Yeah.
makes you better equipped to meet to help people that you get to work with. Despite all of that, it was a challenge to break that mindset.
Hmm.
So it was a long journey, and honestly, I don't think that it had anything to do with gender, like these particular
Yeah.
external
Yeah.
challenges. Had I also been a male, I think the questions would have still been the same.
True.
So it's the conditioning the society has that a person should keep on doing the same thing
Yeah.
throughout their lives. And despite getting the best of everything, my past, and MBA from IIM Indore, BCom honors from SRCC, a well performing leader, well acclaimed, all that recognitions, I realized when I started introducing myself as a coach, that okay, all that past achievements stands for nothing now.
Yeah.
And that was something that was a big learning for me as well, that okay,
Hmm.
whatever I accomplished in the past, the future needs me to do something else for people to take note of me. So those were the sort of external things. In at least in coaching, I still coach mid-career professionals and senior leaders, so it was aligned to what I did in the past somewhat. Like
Hmm.
I was in the field now, I help people largely from the same field. Or at least when I started, I help people largely from the same field. Now, of course, I have diversified. But writing, creative writing, I'm not talking about non-fiction writing, that
Hmm.
anyway blogs and all is part of the coaching aspect. But someone who was making presentations, delivering to CEOs and senior leaders, handling board addresses, facilitating board meetings, it was very difficult for people to imagine me, okay, writing, creative writing, you will write novels, you will write short stories. How
Hmm.
will you, why do you want to do that? So
Hmm.
that was a complete 360-degree shift. And when you are starting out, you are also in doubt,
Of
well,
course.
will this work? And when you hear this from people, now there are a set of people who don't matter because they are strangers or acquaintances, so they
Yeah.
will say anything,
Hmm.
and you learn to take it in your stride. But when people you respect, who you know have your best wishes at heart,
Hmm.
they also ask these questions, and it is out of well intention.
Of course.
It's nothing like, of course, it was mean or spiteful. Then you also start to question, which brings me to this other set of challenges which are internal to you, intrinsic.
Hmm.
Okay. Uh, it took me 3 years. So for 3 years, I was feeling unfulfilled in
Hmm.
my corporate job, and it has nothing to do with the job or the company I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
working with. It was simply because I had evolved as a person. In
Hmm.
my 30s, I was a different individual vis-a-vis when I was in my 20s. But it still took me 3 years to muster that courage to take a pivot,
Hmm.
right? To do something differently. there are people, and I know because now I help others to make that journey, to take that leap of faith. They spend their lives being unhappy in something that they are doing,
Mm.
because there is always this question of courage.
Yeah.
Which one is, there are these inner demons that come to you. Okay, you're thinking this, but these are like those khayali pulabs. You have
Mhm.
not done this before. What makes you think you will be successful? And then there is this question, okay, a steady salary vis-a-vis an uncertain income, and you still have your bread and butter to earn, you still have to put food on the table. So there are these demons anyway that is playing. And then there are constraints because there are family commitments, right?
Of-
So when Smita is a single person, she only has to think about herself.
Yeah.
But Smita is also a wife,
Mm.
Smita is also a mother.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there are family commitments, right?
True.
So the decision you are taking, you also have to factor in, okay, when I do that, will I still be, from a financial side, will I still be able to fulfill the obligations that I used to when I used to earn a steady income? There
Hmm.
is still, and I have, like, straight after my college, I have been working, and I pride myself on my financial independence.
Hmm.
Till date, I mean, it's like the way it is, even in my household, me and my husband have got expenses clearly divided, that these expenses you take care of, these set of expenses I take care of.
Hmm.
For
Hmm.
my own stuff, I it gives me immense satisfaction that I take money from my own purse, or the credit card from my own purse, to pay for something I like, rather than asking my husband. That is the every person, everyone is their own person. This is
Of
the kind
course.
of person I am.
Hmm.
So that was an important thing. Okay, will I still be able to do it the same way? Because I didn't want to ask my husband for money in future for
Yeah.
some of my needs, and also I wanted to continue to meet the household expenses that have always, I have taken it as my responsibility right from the start. So these are, like, I'm giving my own examples, but for every person there are certain internal challenges that they fight. So these are some sort of thing that, grappling with myself, making myself ready to take that leap. Then once I did that, made that leap, I'm a very impatient person.
Okay.
Being a high achiever, that's something that happens, you want to get results quickly. But
Yeah.
when you're doing something new, anything that you start new, it will take time.
Of course.
So, for example, if I've worked for 14 years in the corporate world, you give me a role there, even like if I'm 50% focused, I would still be able to do it with 100% quality. But when you're starting something, you have to be 150% focused to
Correct.
deliver that 100% quality. So it
Hmm.
takes time to get the results. And then I realized, okay, it is not only about starting it out, it's also about keeping that patience,
Yes.
because results will take time coming. And it's not about quitting too soon. There
Yeah.
are many people who become failures because they don't have patience to wait for success.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And being an impatient person, it took me a lot of, like, the first year I was like, okay, I've made a mistake. When I was like, when you have your own business set up, the
Hmm. Hmm.
first year the liability is always going to exceed the assets, the P&L will always be in the negative.
Hmm.
And being the sort of person that I am, very prudent and eye on finances, I'm like, okay, what is this, what is this, my savings is going into my business part. And I was just started writing, okay, people like my stories, will they also buy my books? So these are the sort of questions that come to your mind. And I almost decided, like, 6 7 months down the line, that when the PNL was still in the red,
Yeah.
that maybe, it was just too ambitious, it's time to go back. And that is when the support system helped,
Of course.
because the same people who were telling me, why were you doing this, now looking at what I had achieved till then. So this
Yeah.
is where, okay, well wishers will always remain well wishers. So at first they were worried, but when I was like, almost, I was like, okay, maybe I made a mistake,
Hmm.
these were some of the same set of people. No, Smita, look at your achievements, you have achieved this in 6 months, people take years to do that.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
are being too ambitious. 6 months is too short a time. Give yourself a lot, some more time. It takes time to make a new endeavor a success. And I'm so happy that I didn't quit so soon, because within like 9 to 10 months of when I did this, my coaching practice was back, not back, became in the black. And
Yeah.
since then, it's been a thriving venture. So I'm so happy I didn't quit too soon.
Yes. See, of course, you need patience because anything new, it takes time. You just cannot expect immediate results or, instant gratification for that time. It will take time. So I'm glad you kind of hung it out. And so here you are now. But in this journey, you never faced any challenge because of your gender? I mean, in the corporate
I
world,
would say
learning some.
corporate world, definitely, Sangeeta.
Mm,
Uh, Number one, the gender ratio in the corporate world is anyway skewed.
of
So
course.
there are very few female, or like when I entered the corporate world, the male female ratio, since I started with an MNC company, to be
Mm-hmm.
fair, it was like even. But
Mm-hmm.
what happened, it was a pyramid structure, and that was also the subject of my first TEDx talk, by the way, like why it's a pyramid structure in the. So what happened at the entry level, even if males and females are same, but then as you go higher,
Yeah.
it's the more senior you grow, there are more males in the hierarchy. The representation of female goes down as you go up. So there, I would say there were a lot of stereotypes, a lot of biases. So you are married. So for right before my first job, so like when I passed out of my MBA, I was unmarried. But by the time 2 months between the MBA and by the time I started my job, I was married.
Mm,
Okay. So the thing is, right from the first day, there's a fresher, and okay, you are married. So there is these biases that came in, which is very evident. Oh, you are married. Would you want to travel to an
yeah. Yeah.
outstation project? So there's these biases that people make on behalf of you. Oh, she is married, so she would not be okay to travel.
Mm,
Oh, she is married, so she is not okay to work long hours.
mm.
And then, of course, I became a mother again 3 years down the line after I started working. Oh, so you're a mother now, so you will want easy projects now that
Yeah.
you are
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
people have these biases. So, fighting these stereotypes, these biases, and also, okay, so, and it's not only me, it's also about other women. So, she is a woman, this client is tough. So, let us give her an easy project because she would not want to deal with tough people.
Yeah.
So these biases, stereotypes are there. I would say it's more to do with the conditioning.
Yeah. I
Honestly,
agree.
and it's also because the companies that I've worked in, Sangeeta, they have been Fortune 500 companies. All of them have been MNC. So one thing that I've realized, because I was a consultant, so even though I worked with MNC companies, I had a chance to work with a lot of companies, both MNCs and Indians. And for example, there has when I was a consultant, there was a PSU client I was handling, and I was the engagement manager, and I had two team members with me who were also females. I picked them because of merit, and it
Mm,
was a PSU client, a Navratna PSU client. And then when the engagement partner saw the team I have picked in for the project, he was like, okay, so it's a PSU client, a mindset, and everyone bureaucrats, very senior people, and you will go and present. You also are a lady, and the other two team members you have picked, they are also women. It may not go down well with them, with the client,
mm.
not like in the company. So please take one male member as part of your team. So that is when I
Yeah.
thought, okay, I mean, I didn't even think about that perspective.
Mm,
But from when I look at their perspective, I could understand why, because it's an important client and there was no woman in their office. So the
yeah.
fact is, okay, it's also a cultural difference. So maybe I've been fortunate to work with those companies who, at least at the entry level, there is an equal emphasis on gender diversity, on making sure that women are given equal representation. But I've seen, because of my work, it's not the same in all the companies. So the some of the Indian companies especially that I consulted, I could see very few representation. And there have been instances when I'm talking to senior people of the client, and the client is looking at a junior person
Yeah. Yeah.
sitting beside me because he's a male. And so there were these unconscious biases, the stereotypes, that not only me or anybody, my counterparts during that period, but I would say all women. So there was a survey by McKinsey which showed that 75% of women around the globe have to contend in their organizations they worked in. They had to contend with unconscious and conscious biases,
Yeah.
stereotypes,
Mhm.
and microaggressions. So
Yes,
that's a fact. If you have to take a crack at the glass ceiling, you have to, as a woman especially, develop a thick skin,
absolutely.
have faith in your abilities,
Mhm.
have confidence in the proposition you bring to the table, and
Yeah.
stride ahead. So that was what I have to say about my stint with regard to the glass ceiling, the biases that I faced while in the corporate world. Honestly, in my pivot, be it in the publishing as an author or as someone who is a coach, the I faced quite a lot of barriers which I detailed, but I don't think gender entered into that equation, at
Yeah.
least yet.
Hmm.
Touch wood to that.
I think once you've established yourself, then it does get a lot easier. But yes, in the corporate world, yes, it does exist because, I am also pursuing my doctorate on gender diversity in the corporate world. So, yes, I'm familiar with this, that this is what happens over there. And yes, I think we women need to take a stand and it will take time, but I think we've begun the process. So, we are on that road. So, hoping for the best. Yeah.
Yes.
So, Smita, if you were to look back on your life, do you think there was any particular person or there were people who played the role of mentors or role models in your life?
Absolutely. No one can make it far, be it a man or a woman, without a support system. So,
Hmm.
my earliest role model was my father.
Okay.
I have been very fortunate to have been raised by a broad minded man, coming from a small town, but I think because of the defense world, it
Hmm.
really helps you see things in another perspective. So, right from my childhood, so there was a 1.5 year difference between me and my brother. My brother is younger. And right from the childhood, I've been fortunate to have been raised in such a manner that it was always like I was not meant to. I was not. How do I say? My father raised me in a way that I didn't feel a difference that
Okay.
I'm a girl till I actually entered into my college life outside my home. So it
Okay.
was always like equal responsibility. Education of my education was equally important as my brother.
Hmm.
The goals I wanted to pursue was equally important. I was also equally responsible. So many times in many families, either like girls aren't given importance or they are too protected.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is also the case. Like, well, they do get educated and all, but they're also pampered and protected because they're supposed to be delegates. So I was also fortunate in that way that I wasn't overprotected. The
Okay.
responsibility was also equal. And as a person, as an individual, I am someone who doesn't like cooking. Till date I don't know how to cook. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
So uh, that was always a point of bother for my mother,
Hmm. Hmm.
that I was, as I grew up, she was like, oh, you were not spending time in the kitchen, what would happen? But my
Hmm.
father was always, she will take care of it, let her do what she wants. Because I was more into books. I was either at home, I was with books, or if not home, I was in the library again, exploring the world of books. My father did tell me at a very young age, when he saw that it's unlikely that I'll ever take cooking due to my own, at least out of my own volition. He did give me a very useful advice that, Smita, fine, you don't want to cook, but cooking is a life skill that is required.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Exactly.
somebody in the house would have to cook. If you don't want to cook, make sure that you are capable, that you are not forced to learn why to cook. So
Yeah.
that is his way of telling me, become
Yeah.
capable, that you can afford people who can do cooking for you.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
that sentence has still stuck in my mind. I think I was in my sixth or seventh standard when you would have told that to me. And
Hmm.
that is just one example. So
Hmm.
for me, and I have a lot of friends, of course, who face gender barriers. I have met people who they wanted to take a particular stream. They didn't take that stream simply because their parents wanted them to study only in girls' school or a girls' college.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when I look back, I consider myself fortunate that my father never let me feel that.
Yeah.
So, and he was the one who introduced me to books at a very young age.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
my penchant for writing came because of my interest in reading.
Of course.
And I think when I was like 5 or 6 year old, he introduced me to the world of books. So I was reading Enid Blyton when my counterparts in my class were still going through their drawing and coloring books. So
Okay.
that makes a difference. So whatever I am, I would not have been the person had it not been for my father.
How
Then
wonderful.
I've been fortunate when later in life, when I worked in the corporate world, uh, most of my bosses were males.
Okay.
And again, I'm fortunate that most, there are always exceptions,
Yes.
but most of them mentored me. The stereotypes and bias, they had their places,
Yeah. Yeah.
but they also, to some extent, everyone realized what was holding me back and they always pushed me. For
Hmm.
example, now I do a lot of public speaking. 5 6 years ago, I was someone who used to avoid appearing on stage.
Okay.
I used to give a lot of presentations, but in a public forum, like an industry conference, when it came to stepping up on that podium, I was like, I can't do it. That
Hmm.
stage fright. And whenever my then manager,
Hmm.
who I used to report to, he was a partner in a firm, and he gave my name for 2 3 events for public speaking, and I always had some or the other excuse to back out. Oh, I have so much work, I'm doing this project. And then he realized what is happening when I did it for the third or fourth time.
Hmm.
So for one particular event, he gave my name without consulting me. And
Okay.
then he told me that you have to do it. I've given your name. If you don't go, then it's a loss for the organization because there is no one else. Your name is there. So
Yeah.
either it's a lost opportunity for our organization, you decide what you have to. And after running out of excuses, I decided to do it. And I
Hmm.
was so scared when I did it the first time with trembling feet. For that 30 minutes presentation, I would have practiced for more than 60 hours. Believe me, that was the sort of preparation because I was so terrified. But
Hmm.
fortunately, it went off well, and I enjoyed myself so much that after that, I myself sought public speaking opportunities. To that
Hmm. Hmm.
extent, that same person told me, okay, relax. It's not that every week you will get some opportunity. But
Yeah.
again, the fact, right? Had he not recognized that this is what is happening and had he not pushed me in his own way, maybe at least as a speaker, I would not have been a two-time TEDx speaker for sure. So from there to here, so there are my bosses who have helped me, who have guided me, who have nurtured me, and I'm forever grateful for that.
Course. See, the role of mentors can never be, downplayed. You understand, they are the ones who are holding your hand, who are there, to hold you should you falter. So, of course, whoever it is, they play a very, very critical role in our lives. So,
Absolutely.
Smita, a best selling author who's, like you said, you've written 4 books which have done so well. So, you are just the right person to tell us, to share tips for aspiring authors? I mean, how to make it work. So, 3 tips, 3 quick tips that come to your mind, which you would like to share with aspiring authors.
Consistency matters more than talent. I'm
Of
a best selling author, yes. I have won many awards for my stories and books, yes. But I still consider it is all because of, or most of it is because of my hard work. And
course.
because of that hard work, the talent developed automatically. For
Hmm.
example, I write something every day,
Hmm.
be irrespective of illness, irrespective of vacation, irrespective of my busy schedule. And because I've been writing consistently every day since the last 3.5 years, ever since I took this pivot,
Hmm.
when I look back at what I wrote then and what I'm writing now, of course, when you do something every day, you will improve at it.
Of course.
So, first step, write something every day, trust the process. The outcome will come if you're disciplined enough to be consistent.
Okay.
Second, again, so there's an input and then there is an output.
Yeah.
Writing is an output. you cannot be a writer without being a reader.
Yes.
And again, you have to be consistent at it. So read something every day.
Okay.
Otherwise, you will run out of ideas. And third, don't keep your work to yourself.
Hmm.
Reach out for feedback. And fortunately, we are living in a world where to become a writer, you really don't have to be an author.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
for example, there are many writers who publish stories in different literary platforms, and
Yeah.
they publish story in anthologies. So they may not have a standalone book, but
Hmm.
what they are doing, they are sending their work out for feedback. When you put it out on a platform, there are other readers who are reading it. There are other peers, other writers. When a reader gives you feedback, vis-a-vis when another writer gives you feedback, of course, there's a difference in skill.
Of course.
A
Yeah.
writer knows more than a reader, the nuances.
Hmm. Hmm.
I have improved as a writer because when I started, I pushed my work right from my first day in these literary platforms like Spenmancy, like Story Mirror. There are other writers out there. When they look at your work and they give you feedback, some of the nuances of writing, I imbibed because of the feedback they were kind enough to drop with my story.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that time it felt like criticism, but
Hmm.
now I'm so happy that that somebody took out time to give those constructive criticism.
Yeah. Yeah.
So read every day, write every day, and make sure you're putting your work out there to someone who is unbiased. If you give it to your family, to friends, they will always say positive things
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
make you feel better. You
Right.
need to give it out somewhere where you get those unbiased feedback.
True. True. Very well said. Very well said. All right. So, switching tracks, so to say. Now, as a woman, of course, not only as a woman, I think every individual has two sides to their lives, the personal and the professional. But for the women, the integration between the two becomes a little more difficult because of the various roles we have to play. And we do have to figure a way out of how to integrate or balance the two sides. So, how do you do that in your life?
I very ruthlessly set my boundaries.
Okay.
Okay, that is the first thing. As a woman, you and everyone needs to set boundaries, but especially as a woman, because of the multiple responsibilities you have to set boundaries. For example, like I coach and it's online, so this is the same room, the same space from where I'm giving this interview that I coach. So when the door is locked, everyone knows that means I'm having a coaching session, and unless there's an earthquake or a fire,
Yeah.
they better not try to come in. Anyway, it's locked, but there is like
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
alternative door. But the fact is, they know. So when I'm working, but there's not a session, it's shut. It's not locked. So
Okay.
people can come in.
Hmm.
But when they turn the knob and they find it locked, they know that means I'm into something where I don't want to be disturbed. I want my space. And they give me that space.
Okay.
So that is how you set boundaries, and that is how you allow others or you teach others to respect your boundaries. Because initially when I started, it was very odd for my husband, and later he realized, okay, if it's locked, there's a reason, and come what may, even if he comes in, I'm not going to look at him at that time.
Yeah.
So that is how he got that message. And that is how even others, with my husband it's easy because there's an understanding, but that is how it is even when my in-laws or some of our friends visit. If
Hmm.
it's locked and you have come in, you're of course very welcome, but don't expect me to adjust my schedule, which is pre-decided, because it's a professional commitment.
Correct.
Second, you have to say no.
Yes.
That is how you will maintain that professional and personal boundary. You you can have it all, I firmly believe it, but you cannot have it all at the same time.
Of course.
So be very clear in your mind, what is it that you want at this time. For
Right.
example, if I'm having this conversation with you, then there's always an opportunity cost, because saying yes to these means there is something else that I'm saying no to while having this conversation with you. And you need to be ruthless. And this is where most women are uncomfortable vis-a-vis our male counterparts.
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
Because of our upbringing, conditioning, we feel the other person will feel bad when we say
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. All the time. All the
Ye- But then, in order for you to feel good, which is also important,
Yes,
it's
definitely.
you have to say that no. And third, be very clear about your priorities. So,
Yeah.
as I said earlier, also, you can't achieve everything all the time. So, be very clear what is it that you want to achieve today,
Yeah.
and be very intentional in setting up time for it. So, I
Correct.
mentioned a few minutes ago, I write every day. Now, many people ask me, how do you manage? How come in 3 years you have got 4 books, and this despite your busy schedule as a coach and a speaker? And I'm like, number one, writing is important to me. So I only have to find time. Nobody find time. Nobody else will do it for me.
Yeah.
And because it's important, I have to find a way. So I actually changed my routine. Instead of getting up at 6 a.m. every day, since I started writing, I get up at 5 a.m. every day. And 5 to 7 is my writing time.
Hmm.
When the other people in my house are sleeping, so there is no doorbell to ring, no one to disturb, and I can focus. And then I get about my other routine, and which includes coaching and the other household things. So be
Hmm.
very intentional. Be be very clear that hey, this time, for example, I never let my coaching thoughts or whatever thoughts I have with my discussions with my clients or for to build my coaching practice enter that hour of 5 to 7. That is only for
Yeah.
creative writing. Similarly, I don't let like my creative writing thoughts enter into the rest of the schedule. When I am there with my family, I make sure that I am not looking at phones. I
Hmm.
make sure I at least try to be mindful. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that I'm perfect,
Yeah. Yeah.
but compared to what I was in the past, I really try to be mindful that, hey, I am there, so let me think about this. There may be other challenges, but even if I think it's not that I'll be able to do something about them.
Yeah.
So might as well enjoy the time I have.
True.
So this is something that will help. Mindfulness, saying no, setting boundaries, be very intentional about the
Yes.
time and disciplined enough to stick to that task that you have set out to do in that
But
time.
clarity has to be there, and you have to have the ability to stick to what you want to do. Whatever happens,
Right.
you have to be able to stick to it. So that's very, very important. Okay. So, Smita, living our lives the usual ways and, facing ups and downs, all of that. But sometimes, it becomes difficult to stay the course when we are hit with a setback, a roadblock, or a disappointment. So, how do you cope with these kind of situations?
Number one, first, I accept the emotions. I am human.
Yes.
So if there are setbacks, it's very natural I'll have disappointment.
Yeah.
So I take some time to process that emotion. I
Mhm.
accept that emotion. At the same time, I take care not to overthink. So,
Okay.
for example, if there's a disappointment, there have been times that I'm like, okay, so I'm feeling bad about it. Let me give myself this much time to feel bad. And after that, I'm not going to think about it. And it
Hmm.
was not easy to start with, but trust me, again, if you follow something consistently, you develop that muscle.
I agree.
So
Yeah.
I think, I accept, I also think, but I don't overthink.
Okay.
And second, and this is something which I believe is really important,
Hmm.
you need to take out that time to pat yourself on the back for the achievements you have made. See,
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
human tendency that you overplay on your setbacks.
Yeah.
And you will have setbacks. Life is ups and downs. Even gods have up and downs in their lives. And I really believe in God. So we are humans. We will naturally have. In those down times, it's very important to uplift yourself sooner
Hmm.
than it would take. You also look back at your achievements.
Hmm.
So of course now, like if I see in 3.5 years, 1,700 plus client coaching hours, working with leaders across 10 countries in the globe, being recognized amongst the top 3 women entrepreneurs in the country. So that is what is out there in the social media, and of course that is an achieve. Those are achievements, but have they come in the absence of setbacks? No, there
Definitely.
have been a lot more setbacks than there have been successes. And during those times that there are setbacks, these are the things, right? Like
Yeah.
when I take some time, I take some pause, and I'm like, okay, when I started, this was where my business was. Now 3 years down the line, this is where my business was. Okay, when I started, nobody knew me as an entrepreneur. Now this is the recognition I have got. So I must be doing something right.
Of course, of
In
course.
your low times, it's very important to give yourself credit for your achievements. And I make it a point because it has helped me to be more resilient.
Yeah,
So, what I'm trying to say, Sangita, for all the listeners out there, that the source of your courage, the source of your motivation lies within you. You
yeah,
don't have to look externally for motivation, for inspiration.
right.
Just look in the mirror, and for a change, don't count your flaws. Don't look at those gray hair. Instead, look at that smile that is lighting up your face.
How wonderful. How wonderful is that? That I think is can be so inspiring. We all tend to focus on what's not right, rather than focusing on what is right. And of course, there is so much right happening in everyone's lives. We just tend to, take that for granted. So, like they say, count your blessings. I think that is
Exactly.
so critical.
Yeah. A human mind is geared towards that we
Yes,
overstate our losses and failures and underplay our achievements. So you have to
absolutely.
consciously make it a point, literally count your blessings.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
every day before you sleep, note down three, four things for which happened in that day for which you should be grateful. And
right.
that is how you develop your muscle.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Okay. So, Smita, having followed your ambitions, your aspirations, then made that pivot. Basically, you've been doing what you wanted to do, right? And have had the courage to do it. So, coming from that space, if you were to offer some advice to the young girls of today who are on the threshold of their personal and professional lives, what would you like to tell them?
First, don't listen to others, or
Okay.
at least filter out. It's
Hmm.
not that every advice is bad. So,
Hmm.
or let me modify, listen to everyone, but do what you think is right.
Okay.
Okay? That is the first thing. Second, there are bound to be setbacks.
Yes.
You should give yourself time. The mistake is not in making mistakes, the mistake is if you quit too soon.
Okay.
That does not mean that you stick indefinitely, because there are things that don't work. That's the way life is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
give yourself sufficient time. And third, have a support system.
Yeah.
Okay. If there is no support system around you, and there are many girls, many women where family, for whatever reasons, is not really a support system for their professional ambitions or for the
Yeah.
creative
Yeah.
pursuits they may want to do, that does not mean that your support system has to be confined to the people you know till then, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So when I became a coach and a writer, before that I was only in the corporate world. All my support system, like my well-wishers, friends, were all in the corporate world. They didn't know about coaching, they didn't know about writing.
Hmm.
Now, had I confined myself to that support system,
Hmm.
it would, I would have felt very limited, or I would have become very limited in my outlook.
Hmm.
When I ventured into the new areas, I also made it a point to connect with other coaches, connect with other writers, and that is when, you get a lot of satisfaction in knowing there are others who are sailing in the same
Yes.
boat. You
Yes.
are not alone,
Yeah.
and that feeling helps. So find a support system.
Hmm.
There is support available. It may not be obvious, but if you are on the lookout, you will find one, or otherwise create one. There are
Okay.
many writers who have created communities when they didn't find, and then they attracted other writers, and these communities are thriving.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
find one and create one, and you are all set. There is nothing that you can't do. You
Yes.
have to see, until you give it a try, you don't know what you can't do.
Right. Right. I agree.
So don't write yourself off before trying. Maybe you try something and you fail, but at least try that before concluding that I have failed,
It
rather
is
than
very
thinking I
important
will fail.
because till the
Yeah.
time you don't try, you don't know. So don't give up, without trying. At least give yourself that chance. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. Okay. So again, Smita, we've been speaking about the unconscious and the conscious biases and all those, barriers that women have to face. But having said that, we also know that a lot of work is being done in this space, all these DI initiatives and all that, which are being adopted by companies and organizations. But despite that, there is so much awareness, so much happening around us. Still, we find that women continue to face these biases. So, are there some biases which immediately come to your mind when you look around you?
When you say immediately, one thing is that she is a woman, so she should give more priority to her personal life.
Yes,
That is something that is a very, very immediate bias coming from both men and women alike.
true.
Similarly, if like in workspace, when there is a married woman, I know that the bias not only in the minds of males but also females, that
Mm.
now she is married, she is working just for a sort of pocket money. Her
Yeah,
focus will
yeah,
be on her family. So it's almost a given that you are married, so you have tossed up your ambitions. All
yeah.
your goals are for your family and not for your professions. So these are some very evident very besides being biases, they also become reasons for judgments, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
So you come across a woman who in your eyes is giving more focus on her professional life. Oh, she's not a family oriented woman.
Hmm.
Oh, she is neglecting her family.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, you meet a woman who is married but yet traveling a lot because of her work demands. Oh, she is not putting enough efforts in her marriage. Poor husband.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So, and despite the progress that the society has made, and despite the avenues, like I can very confidently say I had more avenues than my mother did, or
Yeah,
my mother and father did. And I can see my daughter has more avenues than I did, at least externally outside
yeah,
the
yeah.
home business when I was a child. Despite the progress, the mindset unfortunately still remains the same.
Yeah, it does.
Right?
It does.
It will take a lot of time for people to accept that a woman is her own person. She has her own agency. It's her choice. We never, if a male is focused too much on work, we never label him that he's neglecting his
Oh,
family.
never,
We
never.
never say he is too much professional oriented. But
Mm-hmm.
when a female does that, oh, she's too much work oriented. She does not take care of family.
True.
So there are these mindsets that has to change. It will take time. At least now there are women in all spheres, and the advantage is that there is a lot of focus on diversity and inclusion.
There is
So
there.
this discussion has entered mainstream. I
Hmm.
remember 1.5 decade ago when I started my corporate career, diversity was not a mainstream
No, it
discussion.
wasn't. It wasn't.
Mhm.
No.
But 14 years later, when I gave my TED talk, that was the focal point of my TED talk. It had very much entered the lexicon. So things have changed. There is a lot of way to go, unless and the change begins within us.
Yes,
We
yes.
have to change our mindsets, and we have to learn to let go of these judgments, and that's when these biases will go.
I think that's a very valid point you've made. The mindset has to change, and that is for both men and women. It's not only the men's mindset, the women's mindset also has to change. And in that respect, I think when we have these kind of conversations or we have these kind of platforms, at least we are making people aware of the need to change the mindset. When people hear
Absolutely.
and repeatedly, when they hear the same thing, something I think somewhere will start ticking. And I think once that starts happening, then of course it may take time, but at least the process has begun. Yeah,
Right, yes. And a beginning is a job half done. So the
absolutely.
good thing is,
Absolutely.
as you said, the process has begun. We have started taking that step. We have to be patient for the changes to come in.
Yes, yes, yes. So, of course, I don't think I need to ask you this question, but I still will. That you are a prime example of somebody who's rebooted her life. May not in the midlife, like what I like to call midlife rebooting, when people start to thinking, about changing their careers from what they'd been doing for some time, and they start decide to start doing something else. But I am also doing it, you're also doing it, and we see a lot of people around us who are doing it. Why do you think this is happening to such a great extent? I mean, it's not as though the earlier generation did not have hobbies or interests, but why is it happening more than before?
Number one, there is a lot more awareness, and
Yeah,
I would say there is also a lot more resources. Okay,
true, true.
so for especially in the 90s, after the liberalization, when the economy opened up,
Hmm.
okay, there are a lot more companies that we encounter, the options that we have as individuals, vis-a-vis what our parents had and
Yeah,
what our grandparents had. Second, of course, there's this digitalization. So
yeah,
internet and smartphone, all of it came from 2000 onwards. Before that, they were like when I was a kid, when parents were worried that because of TV the children are not studying.
yeah,
Now
yeah,
it's no longer TV, it's because of smartphone.
yeah, yeah.
Children are not studying. So the times have changed because of this digitization. The geographical boundaries have blurred.
Yes, yes.
So we become aware of the options and of unconventional examples much faster. So there are a lot more role models to emulate.
Absolutely.
So maybe even in the past there were people who used to reboot, but
Hmm.
there was no means by which the story will disseminate.
True, true,
Now
true.
there are multiple means by which the story disseminate, and when stories disseminate, stories always have power, they
Of course.
inspire.
Hmm.
So that is another reason. But the most important thing, Sangeeta, is that reinvention is a part of life. If so, we all evolve as individuals. We are growing every day,
Right.
right? So we in our 20s we are different people, in our 30s we are different people, and every decade of our life we are very different from where
Yeah,
we started a decade or 2 decade ago. So the profession I chose in the 20s, it was very much me. It was out of choice. But
yeah.
I was a different individual then.
Hmm,
In
hmm,
my 30s, I was a different individual. And now, as I'm on the threshold of stepping into my 40s,
hmm,
I know for sure I love what I'm doing. But 2 decades down the line, do I see myself doing the same thing? I
hmm.
can't see that.
Yeah, yeah,
So I know I'll be a different person. The fact is there is more and more, at least for me and the clients I coach, there is more and more awareness, and the coaching ecosystem, people, they read books, they look at internet. There is a lot more awareness that at every stage of our life we are changing. So our needs, our wants, our aspirations will change.
yeah.
And what brought us satisfaction in our 20s, it is natural that the same thing won't bring us satisfaction in our 40s. If it is, either you are very fortunate that you have found your purpose, which is endurable,
Hmm.
or you are not growing as a person.
Right,
That is the
right.
only thing.
Yeah. So yeah, I think very, very important that it's not as though earlier people did not have hobbies or interests. It's just they probably didn't understand how to do it. And like you're saying, with social media and this digitalization, there is so much awareness, there's so much exposure. And you get inspired because you see other people doing
Yes,
it. So you say that, okay, if that person can do it, so can I. So I think that is really, helping. So you're saying
absolutely.
every decade you are a different person. So what do you have to say about your future aspirations?
Right now, I want to get even better at what I'm doing. So, I've already been recognized amongst the top 10 coaches in Asia, in India.
Wonderful.
Um, Somewhere down the line, I want to be recognized amongst the top 10 coaches globally.
Wonderful.
Um, and as an author, and of course, with 4 books, readership base is also growing every year as it should. But I want that. In every household which reads books, my book should find a place in their shelf.
Oh,
So
I
that
love
is what I
that.
would look
I
at.
absolutely love this. Well, that's some aspiration. Yeah. Okay.
So those are the things I'm looking at this stage. But having said that, as I said, I'm on the threshold of my 40s. I'm not saying that because I'm going into my 40s, I should change.
Hmm.
But because of my experience in the past too, in both in my 20s and 30s, I also know now I am more open that, hey, this is what I want at this stage, but 3 years down the line, I may want something completely different. And
Right.
that's okay. What matters more is my happiness and my satisfaction. And
Correct.
I should, whatever I do, I should never compromise on that.
So well said. So, Smita, now we come to the final part of the conversation, which is the rapid fire round. 5 quick questions, 5 quick answers. Okay?
Sure.
Set? All right.
Okay.
One writing tip you swear by.
Writing every day.
Great. All right. Okay. So you're a coach. So, one way to deal with a client who thinks they know everything.
Listen and reflect.
All right. Okay. That's a great one. Okay. Now, an easy one. What is your favorite genre to read?
Romance.
Oh, okay. All right. Next one. Which is your favorite writing snack or beverage, if you have any?
Oh, I don't need a beverage when I write. I simply write.
All right. So,
That's
totally
it.
focused.
Totally focused. Yes.
And the final one. If you had a magic wand, what is the first problem that you would like to simply, eliminate or solve?
No more wars. That's the first problem I would solve. Too many children dying lately because
Yes.
of these wars happening in other parts of the globe. So,
Great, great. So, Smita, an extremely enlightening and a very, very inspiring conversation, because I think just shed, you just put spotlight on so many things which we all know. But, sometimes when somebody says those things to us, that's when that bell kind of rings and we say, okay, this is the way to do it. So there are so many tips, so many things that you've shared about your life, which I think will be so, so inspiring. So thank you so much for being a part of the show. It was wonderful having you.
pleasure was all mine, Sangeeta. It felt a very natural conversation. I enjoyed myself. Thank you for having me here, and I hope your viewers find some inspiration from my
I'm,
journey and my thoughts.
I am sure they will. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the About Her show. If you enjoyed this episode, there's plenty more from where that came from. Our previous guests have shared some amazing stories, so be sure to catch up on past episodes. To keep up with our inspiring conversations and to never miss an update, hit subscribe, rate, review, and share the love. Follow us on social media for some great content, and don't forget to check out our website www.aboutherbysangeeta.com for stories that resonate, inspire, and empower. Know a remarkable woman or an inspiring man blazing a trail? We'd love to hear from you. Drop us a note at web.abouther@gmail.com and let's bring their story to life on the About Her show.